Well, welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Automotive Drama. Today I got a real GM nightmare designed. It's a North Star. Yes, it is a North Star Cadillac. Anyways, I'll keep the preamble short. Likes are nice. Subscribes are better. Questions, comments, feel free. If you want to watch any more episodes, please ring the bell. Now, you see this monstrosity in front of you? This is how you support the engine and the transmission to remove the transmission to take the oil pan off after you get the exhaust pipe out. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, this is a standard one. Yes, you could see the pieces of wood, and I'm going to point that out here in a second. And yes, I added that. That didn't come with it. It's just a piece of angle iron, an old bed frame, and I bolted it to that so there's no tipping up and down or no tipping down. And then I strapped it to the body here and here, and strapped it around here so there's going to be no tilting, no tipping unless I want it to tip. I'll loosen that up and tip it. There'll be no tilting of the engine. I don't know if you notice that the engine's already lifted up probably 2 inches. Alright, to put this thing in is fun. You have to take the upper strut mount off, which is laying on the ground over there somewhere. There it is under there. And of course that thing's bad. And then you can get to this bolt. Now you're going to have to get a longer bolt than the one they give you from the factory. I have a bolt assortment for doing all kinds of pulleys. This one goes right there. There's a little boss on the head that's got a little, it's a 5/16 bolt, so it'll definitely hold the weight, and that's pretty much the only place you have. You're going to have to loosen up the coolant bottle to make sure you don't destroy it with the weight of this thing. Now, if you want to notice what I've done here, this normally goes in here, but I just didn't want to go over long enough. So if you notice how I modified that, I put a longer bolt and a shim, and then I also lifted it up higher. And I like to balance the weight across the piece of wood instead of like these just 2 little rubber spots here. It gives you more stability. Same thing over there. And then I made sure I wedged a nice nut. Yeah, that's an old nut off of, I don't know what, probably a ball joint off a truck. And so that way there's no tipping. If it wants to tip, it can't tip because this is wedged in there, and the weight is on this thing, as you can see. If you can see it, I can still lift it a little bit, but I don't need to. Same thing on this side. Now, this side's a little bit different because it's not as wide as the other side. This is where the airbox rides. So this part of the body is not as wide as that one. So I had to do a little bit of I had to use a wider, what is that, about 6-inch piece of wood. I keep these handy because I do a lot of cars like this. And then, again, that was my shims. I got to find another shim like I have on the other side. I only found one. But I shimmed that up, bolted it, and wedged it. So now this doesn't tip down. All the weight is balanced, super tight. And there are 2 holes in this thing for added extra. So I probably didn't really need to add that. But hey, you never know, because that's a lot of weight. And I got to get underneath this thing. And if that thing falls on me, I hope I'm dead. Alright, so got it. And now this side, you can see I removed the throttle body and the EGR valve because the chains were so close to the throttle body sensor and the EGR. I didn't want to break them, and so I had to take off the evap tube also because I didn't want to break it. And there's a bracket right there that's made after, I don't know, and that bracket right there, that's plenty of support to hold the weight. As you can see how I double chained it. I just did that for support on the one side, and I see how I looped the chain around so I could get it at the angle I wanted it so it wouldn't slip. I pretty much showed you what you have to do to do the upper side. Now, well, where's my light? The fun part. If I can grab my damn light. There it is. Okay. Now, you can see here, I've lifted the engine up so high that the engine mount is just loose in the hole. It should be sticking down a couple inches. Same thing with that one. You can actually see a gap in the engine mount. So I know that. Same thing with the transmission mount. I mean, I can wiggle it with my fingers so there's no weight on it. So right now, that support on top is holding all the weight of the engine and the transmission. And I have to take the transmission out to take the oil pan off because of GM's beautiful exhaust design. They could come up with something better than that. They're a bunch of morons. Anyways, this thing. The frame, see all these lines? There's a bracket on the top side there, a bracket on the top side here. We got to take the front dust cover thingy off and get all these loose. Alright, all those loose. You got to loosen up the sway bar because it goes, I'll show you that in a minute. Got to loosen up the ball joints. You got to loosen up the rack and pinion. And you can see that the rack and pinion is not in the frame. And I have it tied up by the, sorry. I have it tied with just a strap from a ratchet strap and, you know, a fancy knot up there. And I'm able to keep it an inch above, about an inch above where it should be, so I don't have to deal. The book says pull the rack. Screw all that. You see, I got the sway bar hanging because you got to kind of like take the frame down in one piece. And yes, there's another bracket. Make sure you get all the brackets for those lines. But the sway bar goes over those lines, and I ain't cracking the lines loose. I ain't going through all that. I didn't even look at the manual. It probably says that, but I ain't doing all that. So when I'm going to lower the subframe down, and I can pull that out as I'm lowering the subframe, and bring it up and put it back in over the lines, pretty much like you would have to do if you're going to have to change it. Now this side, there's lines up here, and then there's a little tube right there. I don't know if you could see that or not, right there. That one's easy to get to. There's a bracket above here that holds these lines. It's right there. And there's one there. When I lower the subframe down, it'll be much easier to get up in there, and then I can loosen those up. You also have to loosen up, and I haven't even tied it up yet. You got to take the air injection pump off. It's just much easier to take it off. It's just much easier to take it off. Just one plug, 3 bolts that are easily accessible, and 2 lines. Right there. I was going to pull the whole bracket, but then that's a real pain, so I just decided I was going to pull the hoses. And then the 3 bolts right there, and it wiggles right out. And don't forget the plug. And it's got an ensuring that you're never going to get it plugged in and getting clipped. Now, there's another, all this up there, once I get the subframe down, it's really easy. There's 2 bolts there for the ABS pump. And there's 1 bolt up here on the top side. They're 10 millimeters. You need a ratchet, small ratchet wrench gets that out. And then make sure you tie up that ABS pump, which I'm going to do here in a minute. And then you can lower the subframe down. And then you can get those lights out. And it's just those, there's 4 back there on the back side. And then there's 2 on the front side. Now you got to be careful. If you see the bumper, it tucks up underneath there. So when you drop this thing, you got to drop it down in the back and slide it back at an angle to get it up to clear the bumper. And I ain't pulling the bumper off. Sorry, ain't happening. But, alright, well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Automotive Drama. And yeah, my rack's sitting over there on the thing, underneath all that pile. Wish I had it up right now for this job. I got a guy coming to rebuild the cylinder. I'm going to put that baby up because I've had enough of this crawling on my back. But again, thanks again for tuning in, and stay tuned for more episodes of Automotive Drama. Have a good night, my friends.